Hey guys, how's it going? It's the Crypto Analyst here, and today I wanted to talk about why Bitcoin dumped. Now, if you guys don't know already, Bitcoin has fallen nearly $2,000 in the last 24 hours. It's down about 11 to 12% as of right now, but it bounced at a very significant location that I want to talk about today, and I also want to go into detail about why Bitcoin dumped. Now, we talked about why this was a very coin toss kind of situation, how there's a very good argument for both the bulls and the bears prevailed in this, really in this turnout. So today I really want to elaborate on this and explain exactly what happened. So if you guys are interested, go and stick around for the video, and do not forget to hit the like and subscribe button, as it does help out the channel a lot. With that being said, let's go ahead and dive on into this. Now, this is something that I talked about again in the live streams the past couple of days, and one of the biggest, kind of key takeaways is that this was a no trade zone for a reason. There was great arguments for both the bulls and the bears. Obviously, the bears prevailed, and I want to talk about why. So first things first, guys, one of the most notable things for me and one of the most biggest eye catchers for me was the fact that this death cross happened back here on the 4-hour, and this has just been continued to be a death cross, and we thought that this was actually going to reverse around September, 7th. And so when this didn't reverse, and this actually showed as a really kind of as a bull trap, when this turned into not being a golden cross into staying a death cross, this rejection is almost always a very, very bad thing for the bulls, because to have a fake out like this on a golden cross is just one of those situations where if you go back and you look at previous ones, it's more often than not, it's a very bad thing to see. So for this, bear cross to not reverse into a golden cross when these bands get so close, these EMA bands, get so close, it's generally a bad thing, because what this says is that this is actually a rejection from the EMAs and possible of a continuation in this trend. And of course, the trend being this death cross with the bears to the downside. This actually attempted this a second time, also rejected, just another warning signal of, hey, this could get very ugly very fast. Of course, with the rejections of the golden cross, not one but two different times in the time zone of like a week or two, literally not even a very big time frame at all, to have a double rejection of a golden cross like this. Of course, also rejecting upper resistance each time it rejected this golden cross. All of this kind of stuff coming together isn't generally a good thing. Of course, there was 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 different touch points on the top of Bitcoin, just saying, hey, technically this resistance is very, very strong. Now, you could argue the exact same thing for support, which is one of the things that we talked about. Again, 1, 2, and then 3, and then 4 over in here, saying, all right, well, support is holding, but I would argue that because of how gapped out the support was and how, just consistent the resistance was, the resistance certainly was stronger than the support. Now, this does mean that if this was to break out, it would be very, very monumental, because that would be a lot of resistance breaking. However, resistance held and the price of Bitcoin broke support. So as soon as it broke this pennant, guys, immediately, my thoughts were measured and moved down to the bottom of this descending triangle that we had previously drawn in. As soon as that broke, we're looking pretty much straight at either, what we really are looking at is the heart line next. And so when this fell, I was looking at this going, okay, well, where could this have gone? And I remembered the idea of this parallel channel that we actually had drawn up, and how big of a part that this heart line has played. We can see in here the rejections, for the most part, nothing's going to be exactly perfect, but for the most part, you see the rejections up here, continuing the rejections around the heart line over here. Actually broke above it, came back down, and now started using it as support. So you can see support in here, support in here, support in here, and of course, support still being in here on Bitcoin. So now that we know kind of why it's fallen and why it was so bad, one of the things I want to elaborate on is why it was so volatile. You literally have 8 hours of just Bitcoin just falling and falling and falling, going from, in one day, from $10,000 to nearly $8,000 on the dot. So why did this happen? Now, we talked about this on the one day chart. If we go over here, we can see very, very clearly, guys, this volume was steadily falling off. We talked about the squeeze happening on the price action, and we also talked about the squeeze happening on the volume. These are just some of the situations when the price is getting squeezed like this, and it's right up there, at the very end of its formation. The price is getting squeezed. The price has been getting squeezed. The volume has been getting squeezed. This was pretty much at wit's end. I gave it 48 hours on Sunday, and of course this happened on Tuesday. It was just one of those things that you had to see coming. Whether that was to the up or the downside is completely understandable, again, as to either way and which and why. But the fact that a very large move was coming, and this is actually, staying and closing below the 50 EMA on the daily time scale, and of course below the 200 on the daily time scale as well. This does make me a little bit more nervous because, in my opinion, this is one of those kind of do or die scenarios for Bitcoin. Not to say that it can't just go back up from here. Again, I'm not saying that at all. Maybe this does just play out a giant bull flag scenario. However, ideally, if Bitcoin wanted to continue in an uptrend and hit new local highs above 14,000, it would have needed to have broken out here, and it didn't do that. So I am definitely turning a little bit more bearish on Bitcoin as this is coming downwards. Again, great bounce off the heart line, but I think one of the most important things here is if it can hold or not. So let's go ahead and move this. Now that I explained the volume, let's go ahead and go back to the 4-hour candle chart for Bitcoin. And I want to explain a little bit more about the indicators, oscillators, and why I actually think Bitcoin has a decent chance at bouncing here due to some of the RSI and stuff. So again, very textbook move as to why a large move was coming between the squeezes on the price and the volume and everything else in here. It was just one of those obvious things. So looking at the price action of Bitcoin, again, it's bouncing off this heart line, but is this permanent? Well, the MACD actually in the short term is rounding up. You're still kind of waiting for these oscillators to start pointing upwards a little bit more. But for the most part, this is looking like short-term bullish here. It's probably time for Bitcoin to bounce. And of course, I am looking at the 4-hour RSI over here. What I do see that I actually really liked, because in situations like this, it's so often and so common that this could just be the first leg down. The first leg down out of 1, 2, or most likely even 3 legs. And could this just be the first leg in that process? And that was an idea that crossed my mind. And immediately, what I'm going to do, and looking at the possibility of having a first leg down here as well. Is the second leg going to follow immediately? Well, I did see actually this, this temporary, although it wasn't a higher swing low, this is still a higher low on the RSI, showing me that there is lower levels of negative momentum, when this wanted to retest on the candle chart over here, which we can actually see over here. So with the initial breakdown on Bitcoin, all the way down to around $8,103. It came back up and then came back down. Now this time it only came down to around $8,200, which is about $100 higher. Now this was telling me that on the second attempt towards the downside, it was higher on the RSI instead of lower, which means that there's lower levels of negative momentum coming into Bitcoin, which is telling me that ideally this could be a good time to long, or at least kind of scalp along. So now that we got all this out of the way, what am I looking for on Bitcoin? Well, I am looking to make sure that this heart line is going to hold, because if it doesn't, the target price to the downsides is in the low 6,000s, which is something that none of us want to see, for the most part, unless you want to just continue to accumulate Bitcoin. You probably don't want to see Bitcoin go back down into the 6,000s. I know that if it gets down probably in the 6,000s or below, I will probably add to my portfolio. But with that being said, I am looking and watching Bitcoin to make sure that it doesn't play out some sort of bear flag scenario here. I am going to be looking very closely, very tightly, making sure that there's no kind of pennants forming in this area or no kinds of rising channels, because if I see either of those, it's going to be a warning sign that there might be another leg down. So watching very, very closely if I start seeing this upwards channel formation forming on Bitcoin, or even just this some sort of a pennant, probably a little bit bigger than that, maybe something like this, I don't know. I definitely am going to get skeptical that this could just be a continuation pattern, and then there could very well be like another leg to the downside or something like that. So watching Bitcoin very, very closely, guys, I wanted to make sure that I explained this. A lot of people had questions. I was asked if I was going to do an emergency video on this. I said no, because this is, again, just something that we had been expecting on the channel, something that we had talked about a lot. But nonetheless, I wanted to make sure that the information was covered and that there was at least an in-depth explanation on my channel, if not even on YouTube, because a lot of time people kind of just ramble and say, well, this was this and this was that, but like I wanted to go in depth and explain from a technical standpoint, technical really side as to why I believe that this happened, because I thought this large move was fairly obvious that it was coming in one direction or another. So hopefully you guys did enjoy the video. If you guys did, do make sure to hit that like button and subscribe button. If you guys do want to see more content, share this with a friend if it really did help you out, or you really did enjoy what you watched today. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you guys in the next video.